Professor Eisner, thank you for accepting our interview request. After your lecture yesterday, it was clear that you are not only an excellent cardiac physiologist, but also an excellent communicator in science. You were able to talk about seemingly complex subject in a way that was understandable to all. Is this an innate talent or the result of a conscious self-education?
I don't know. When I started my career, I had to give lectures to students. Some students are interested in what one's talking about, but others you have to persuade. So I guess it was self-preservation to try and communicate properly.
Your research career has focused on two simple cations, the sodium ion and the calcium ion. Is there anything else that has not been explored about the cardiovascular effects of these?
Oh, I'm sure there's lots that we don't know about. I mean, we've tried to explore what we know about already, but I'm sure tomorrow something will come up that's unknown about one or both of these.
When I was studying pharmacology, I had the feeling that antiarrhythmic drugs belong to the most problematic ones because their efficacy was not always satisfactory and there was dangerous side effects. How has this changed, let's say, in the last 20 years?
Well, I think we still need new drugs, and because the current drugs we have exactly those side effects. The same action that will remove some arrhythmias makes other arrhythmias worse. I mean, obviously in the last 20 years we've also had the introduction of intracardiac defibrillators for the worst cases, but no, it's still a problem.
And what is the perspective for the development of antiarrhythmic drugs? Is there a place for modern techniques such as biological drugs or mRNA-based agents?
That's an interesting question. I don't know about mRNA-based agents, but I mean, biological drugs would certainly be a very interesting thing to pursue. And I suppose one of the problems about people who have heart disease and are likely to have arrhythmias is that they need to take these drugs every day. So it's not like immunizing someone against COVID, for example, where it's a one-off thing, but it will be worth pursuing.
Looking at your publication list, it is clear that you are an advocate of collaborative research. Are you consciously building up these cooperations, or how did you develop collaborations with your Hungarian colleagues? What was the story behind it?
Hungarian colleagues. Well, I moved from London to Liverpool, and one of my colleagues in Liverpool told me that his wife's brother was a cardiac pharmacologist who came from Hungary and was at that time in the United States, and this was András Varro. So he came to join me in Liverpool, and we had a wonderful time. In my experience, so many scientific collaborations start off in chance. You meet people through friends, you meet people at meetings, you get on with them and work together.
In addition to your life science research, you are strikingly interested in the reproducibility of scientific research. Why do you consider this is an important issue, and why have you turned your interest into this direction?
I'm really concerned, as are many people, about what's currently called the reproducibility crisis, where research apparently can't be reproduced as often as one would like. Now, I'm not sure that the situation is actually any worse today than it was 20 years ago, but we're certainly more aware of it. And we should do our best to try and ensure that science is reproducible, particularly in biomedical research, where the research that people do affects, the lives of patients.
Yeah, that's true. And there are some other problems as well. Currently, there is a lot of pressure on researchers to publish as many and as good papers as possible. Unfortunately, some research projects have negative results, and these results are very difficult to publish. What are the consequences of this in your view, and how do you think this problem can be solved?
I think the consequences are enormous and are quite well appreciated. So imagine that you've got several groups working on the same problem, perhaps 10 groups. 9 of these groups get a negative result. 1 of the groups gets a positive result. It's going to be easy for the positive result to be published, and the scientific world then thinks there is a positive result, and it's erroneous. So we have to avoid this. Also, if we do experiments and get negative results and don't publish them, then other people don't know about that, and they will waste their time trying to do exactly the same experiments.
But there is a malpractice from scientific publishers because they don't want to publish the paper if it's based only on negative results.
Sure, it's less exciting.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
No solution.
No. Yeah. Well, what you can, in the clinical arena, as you probably know, if somebody does a trial, they have to register the trial in advance and then publish it, whether the results are positive or negative. This has been suggested in basic science, but it's rather more complicated because quite often, typically in basic science, you do set out to do one experiment and they end up doing something completely different. But people have suggested pre-registration.
It's a good idea. A few years ago, in a response to an editorial, you pointed out in an article the disadvantaged position of women in science. Beyond stating the obvious, what could be done to change this?
Well, one thing is to provide more female role models. I think it's, when one goes to meetings, quite often more than 50% of the audience are female, but fewer of the speakers are female. It's getting better, but it's still not perfect. And if you don't let young women see role models out there, that doesn't help. There are also a lot of pressures in society. Once people have children, still we live in a world where mothers tend to spend more of the time looking after the children than the fathers do, and that interrupts their careers as well.
Yeah, this is a common problem, I think, all over the world or in many countries. And it is also a common problem, in my view, that today a career in research is not so attractive for women, but also for men, as it was some decades ago. What could be the reason for this? And what has changed in the recent decades?
I don't know particularly about Hungary, but in many countries, academic research, the salaries are less than they are in industry, business, or in medicine. You know, if a 19-year-old goes into science, that their salary is likely to be a lot less when they qualify than if they become a doctor. So that doesn't make it attractive. It's a very, scientific research is a very insecure position. I mean, if you, for example, train to be a doctor, you're almost guaranteed to have a job. In science, you have to compete with others. So it's badly paid and less secure.
Do you think that programs similar to the National Academy of Scientists Education can help to attract young people?
Oh, I'm sure, absolutely. I think this is a wonderful scheme. I went to 2 schools yesterday morning, and the enthusiasm of the young people, and some of them were perhaps no more than 14 or 15. The enthusiasm doing experiments was great to see.
So you saw the future, maybe?
Oh, absolutely, no.
Do you agree that although the basic skills are not changing, the attitude of students to research and learning is very different from what it was some decades ago? Is there a change?
I think it has to some extent. I mean, I suppose looking back on myself when I was at high school, I did what the teachers told me to do. It was perhaps a more hierarchical system. Today, my students question me. They want to know why they have to learn this, etc., etc.
The same happened yesterday at the conference, because some of the students had very sharp questions.
Yes. Yeah.
And finally, a very, very serious professional question that cannot be missed when talking to a researcher from Manchester. United or City?
Well, I'll dodge that. My wife has 3 brothers who are all avid Manchester United supporters, so I have to support Manchester United.
Okay, that's the correct question.
Yes, absolutely.
For this. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for visiting Hungary and Szeged, and I hope that you will return very soon. Thank you.
I hope so very much. Thank you.
Thank you.